When HOA President Delilah Thornwick bulldozed my lake cabin, claiming I hadn't paid HOA fees, I figured it was some kind of scam. When she filed forged papers saying I owed hundreds of thousands of dollars, I got suspicious. But when my daughter cracked her emails and uncovered $2.3 million in stolen HOA funds, I realized Delilah hadn't just picked on you, she'd declared war on the wrong family. When Marcus and Patricia Callaway moved into Willow Creek Estates, they expected a quiet life. Marcus, a retired firefighter, and Patricia, a decorated colonel in the Army Corps of Engineers, had worked hard for decades. They wanted peace, community, and stability, a safe place to raise their 16-year-old daughter, Emma. But their dream turned into a nightmare the moment they crossed paths with Delilah Thornwick, the powerful and manipulative president of the Homeowners Association. It began with a fine and outrageous $250,000 penalty slapped on the Callaways for their newly built garage. According to Delilah, the garage violated HOA design codes. Yet the Callaways had obtained every permit, followed every regulation, and built the structure legally. At first, Marcus thought it had to be some kind of mistake. He calmly gathered documents proving compliance and presented them to the HOA board. Patricia even detailed the engineering and safety standards they had met. But Delilah wasn't interested in facts. She wanted control. Rules are rules, she sneered at the meeting. If we make exceptions, this neighborhood will fall apart. From that day on, the Callaways became her target. The fine was just the beginning. Delilah weaponized every tool at her disposal. Soon, anonymous complaints began appearing against the Callaways' noise violations, landscaping disputes, and even accusations that they were disturbing community harmony. Police officers were called to their home on baseless reports. Letters arrived threatening liens against their property. Neighbors, pressured by Delilah's influence, were asked to sign petitions demanding the garage be torn down. The harassment intensified with $500 monthly fines, stacking one after another until the total threatened to cripple the Callaways financially. Delilah's message was clear: either submit or lose your home. But the Callaways weren't the kind of family to be intimidated. Patricia's military background had taught her resilience. Marcus, who had faced fires and emergencies his entire career, wasn't about to bow to a bully. And Emma, bright, curious, and determined, refused to let her parents fight alone. They began keeping records, photographing letters, saving emails, and documenting every interaction. What started as defense soon turned into something bigger, a full-scale investigation. Through persistence, the Callaways uncovered troubling patterns. HOA elections, supposedly fair and transparent, were manipulated. Votes were miscounted, or mysteriously lost. Opposition candidates were disqualified on technicalities. Delilah had ruled unchecked for nearly a decade. Digging deeper, Marcus noticed another disturbing connection. Families who had lost HOA disputes, those fined heavily or accused of violations, often ended up selling their homes under pressure. Many of those homes were then demolished, with demolition contracts awarded to Thornwick & Sons Construction, a company owned by Delilah's relatives. It wasn't just power, it was profit. The Callaways shared their suspicions with a small group of trusted neighbors. One by one, others came forward with stories of intimidation, wrongful fines, and suspicious foreclosures. What the Callaways had endured was not an isolated incident, it was part of a systematic pattern of abuse. That's when Emma made the breakthrough. Tech-savvy and persistent, she dug into public records and digital archives. Late one night, she stumbled across emails Delilah had accidentally left unsecured on a cloud server. Those emails told the full story: fraudulent election practices, instructions to board members to target specific families, and most damning of all, details of over $2.3 million siphoned from HOA funds into shell accounts tied to Delilah's family businesses. Armed with this evidence, the Callaways contacted the state attorney general's office. At first, officials were skeptical. HOA disputes were common, and most were petty squabbles. But when investigators saw the scope of the documents, they realized this was no ordinary complaint. A quiet investigation began. Subpoenas were issued. Forensic accountants started tracing money through layers of shell companies. Meanwhile, Delilah escalated her attacks. Emma's school account was hacked, with fabricated accusations of cheating. Patricia's military record was anonymously questioned. Marcus was falsely accused of threatening a neighbor, but instead of silencing the family, the smear campaign backfired. Each new attack added urgency to their fight. The Callaways responded with calm persistence, refusing to be rattled. And with every step, the investigation grew stronger. The truth broke wide open at an emergency HOA town hall meeting. The room was packed, tension hanging thick in the air. A state investigator stood before the residents and revealed what had been discovered. He explained how Delilah had falsified elections, imposed baseless fines, and siphoned millions of dollars into her own accounts. Then, he projected Delilah's incriminating emails for everyone to see. Gasps filled the room as her own words exposed her greed and arrogance. Delilah tried to fight back. claiming she was the victim of lies and conspiracies. But when Emma stood and told her story, how she had uncovered the evidence and how families had suffered, something shifted for the first time in years. The residents weren't afraid. They were furious. Within 24 hours, state agents raided HOA offices, seizing records and computers. News cameras arrived. The once feared Delilah Thornwick was led from her home in handcuffs, facing charges of fraud, racketeering, and abuse of power. Her allies abandoned her. Contractors confessed. Board members turned witness. Even her nephew admitted to hacking Emma's account on her orders. The empire she had built over years crumbled in weeks. But the story didn't end with Delilah's arrest. The real challenge came after restoring trust in a community left scarred by years of abuse. The Callaways led the effort. With neighbors' support, Marcus reluctantly accepted the role of HOA president. Patricia oversaw financial reforms, introducing strict transparency measures. Every expense was now posted publicly for residents to see. New elections were held under independent supervision. For the first time in years, the board truly reflected the voices of the community. Emma became a local hero. A newspaper profiled her as the teenager who brought down a corrupt HOA. Neighbors often stopped her to thank her, and her story inspired others to stand up in their own communities. Slowly, Willow Creek Estates changed. Barbecues replaced hostile meetings. Neighbors who had once lived in fear began working together again. Children played in yards without parents worrying about arbitrary fines. And the Callaways, they finally had peace. Months later, Marcus and Patricia sat on their porch, watching the sunset over their restored garage, the same garage that had started everything. All this, Marcus muttered, shaking his head, over one garage. Patricia smiled. It was never just about the garage. It was about standing up when someone tries to take what's yours. Emma, tapping away on her laptop, looked up and added, and making sure they can't do it to anyone else. Their fight had exposed corruption far beyond their neighborhood. Other communities stepped forward, emboldened to challenge abusive HOAs. State lawmakers began drafting reforms to ensure transparency and fairness in neighborhood associations. Delilah Thornwick's name became a cautionary tale. Her story taught in legal seminars and homeowner workshops as an example of unchecked power gone wrong. The Callaways had not only defended their home, they had sparked change. And in Willow Creek Estates, justice had finally come home. What began as a single outrageous fine grew into a battle that revealed deep corruption. But through courage, persistence, and unity, one family brought down a system of abuse that had seemed untouchable. The Callaways' story is a reminder that even in the face of powerful opposition, ordinary people can fight back and win.